Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to this podcast. This is episode 5 of Lawyers with Stories. And today I'm very excited to have my LinkedIn buddy, um, my namesake, as my guest today. So it's going to be very hard to have a proper civilized conversation, but I'm going to try my best. So this podcast exists to inspire, motivate, and encourage aspiring lawyers through the journeys and stories of other lawyers just like them. And of course, the aim is to humanize lawyers through their stories and remove the flaws and misconceptions, right? The takeaways from this podcast that I want you guys to maybe one or two or all of these takeaways can be yours is that number one, you can succeed without the best start in life. Finishing strong is better than starting strong. Secondly, good marks or grades are not indicative of how good a lawyer you will make. Thirdly, the importance of taking charge of your law school experience, including self reflection, finding mentors to model after, and of course, having your own personal grit without any outside encouragement or cheerleading, right? So, as I said, I welcome my new friend, but of course, instantly clicked. So it's like we've known each other for forever. Lisa Blasser to the podcast.
Hi,
Um,
Lisa. Thank you for
Hi.
having me. I agree. We instantly did connect, didn't we? We really did. Once we talked that first time, we could have gone for hours despite our time change and all the thousands of miles between us.
Yeah. So I mean, so I think what connected us was that we have well, amongst my many multifaceted passion is to affect the learning methods of law school students. And so we hit it off immediately in terms of, getting into the nitty gritty, the science of the thing, and just nerding out on that and being so passionate about how law students learn. And so I gravitated towards her LinkedIn content naturally because we tend to think alike, and you know, um, it didn't actually surprise me that we had the same name because we think the same. So that was a nice it's a nice kind of experience for me also being a content creator on LinkedIn, to find someone that not only shares my name but shares my passions.
I love
Um, so
certainly share
yeah,
those passions. I can't possibly get behind the mindset of law students enough and supporting that healthy mindset, that belief in yourself, that you're capable of teaching yourself anything is one of my most favorite things to do.
yeah. So I mean, the purpose of the interview, guys, is obviously we're going to share Lisa's journey from the beginning to now. And you can expect to be inspired and even pick up some of Lisa's passion for helping law school students find their learning comfort zone, right? And what works for you. And of course, if you want to go into legal education while still practicing law and having a firm, this episode is for you, right? So um, you can be inspired, and I know I am whenever I listen to any of Lisa's other podcast appearances. I listen from the beginning to the end, so hopefully it's the same experience for you. Um, and yeah, like I said, we have the same name, we share similar passions, and of course, it didn't make sense for us not to become instant friends, right? So, um, and of course, I remember watching her on a podcast recently, and it resonated at such a deep level. It was more than just like professional, and I feel it's so important for Lisa's story to be heard because, from my perspective, she gives off a very sympathetic energy towards students, law school students, which kind of draws you in. And I'm not a law school student, and I just instantly get like magnetized, right? So this is, I mean, this is especially needed in the legal profession where it's often the antithesis. So it's very harsh and cutthroat, and you're a bit of an odd burger if you are kind and sympathetic and you want the good for people. So you know, that's another reason for you to keep listening, because you probably will get drawn in and hopefully go and follow her on LinkedIn, right? So Lisa, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Just a brief kind of elevator pitch from start to finish, from the beginning to where you are now, and then we'll take it up from there.
That was the kindest introduction. Thank you so much for those words. You are so thoughtful, and I hope you know that I really do appreciate what you just said, and how you consume my take on the legal profession. So, hi everybody. My name is Lisa Blasser, and my story in the law kind of took a non-traditional path. I didn't have all the accolades going in. I had just finished a 4-year university and didn't have, dreams from my childhood of being a lawyer. Instead, I had kind of been told my whole life that I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough. I was kind of a lollygagger because I am naturally a happy-go-lucky person. So when I graduated from college, I decided I'm going to challenge myself to see if that story I had been told was true. And so I decided to go to law school as a challenge to my intellectual capacity. And I found myself after my second semester on academic probation. And so the stories were true. And I thought to myself, man, I really thought that I was capable of teaching myself anything and that I could do anything, Lisa. And so when I found out that that was happening, I thought to myself, what have I been doing? I sat down, I let myself feel the disappointment and the frustration of being almost kicked out of law school and being told I wasn't good enough from the law school now, and my peers and professors and the deans. And I said, what can I do that's different than what I've always done in undergrad and in law school? So I created a list of what I did with each subject, how I learned that information. And I went to as many people as I possibly could that had expertise in studying, my professors, students that were getting really good grades in the class, who were great, who I was grateful talked to me. And I asked them, hey, here's my process. How can I tweak this and change this to get to your level or the level that will pass your class? And gratefully, everyone came together and supported me. And I got over my frustration and my self doubt because I said, I'm going to wear my academic probation status as a badge of honor. I'm going to love myself despite it. I'm not going to let this degrade me, or it doesn't really mean anything to me as my role as a human. It just means that I am struggling with something in this very limited period of law school. And so I decided to let everything go and go full throttle into a new study process, a new study system for each of the topics in every one of my classes. It worked. I graduated with high honors. I passed I'm from the States, the California bar exam on my first attempt. I went on to have a very successful practice. Gratefully, Lisa, I met my husband in law school. We opened our own practice 11 years ago, and we've been running a personal injury and a family law practice. And I went back to knowing, all along I knew I wanted to give back to students in a way that was meaningful and to give them something I was missing so that they could avoid that failure that I had to experience. And so I took a position while I was still practicing as an assistant director of an academic success and bar prep department at a ABA law school here in Southern California. And what I found was that students, law schools, law school prep companies, nobody is teaching students a comprehensive process to learn their studies. And so I worked with a lot of students. I, in the beginning, would give my opinion. What really was kind of an awakening for me is that no two students or humans think alike. And so because of that, I can't just give them my own opinion. And it kind of bothers me when people are like, I used to do it this way, Lisa. Like, so you got to do it this way. I can't, that grates on me. So I conducted a qualitative phenomenological study. The phenomenon being, what do successful law students do to thrive? And I interviewed students and I took all of their systems and I eliminated the redundancies and I was left with the most comprehensive picture of what could be done to succeed in law school from day one to the final exam. Um, I took the results of my study and I published my book, 9 Steps to Law School Success. And I opened up my own company, the Law School Success Institute, and created my flagship course, the Law School Operating System, all based on that data. And today I'm excited. I still get to practice law, and I get to work directly with individual law students, and I partner with law schools across the country to teach the law school operating system, and really give students a comprehensive, like on day one, when I get my syllabus, what do I do? Instead of, hey, start with writing essays or start with briefing or start with, no, it's very step by step, linear, chronological. Here's what you do for every topic you're responsible for learning. Here's how you master it. And that's what I do. And I love my job. And I love meeting people like you.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so much to pull out from that. I think what the first point that resonates with me is that you took charge of your experience. Um, and ultimately now you're not just using what worked for you.
Correct.
You tailored it in such a way that it's essentially the same system, but the students can adapt it according to their learning style. So I mean, I think that's something that I'm also always challenging. Is that no two journeys are the same in law school, at college. You have to open it up. And what I love also is self-reflection that you
Yep.
brought out. That okay, I need to take this by the horns and figure out a system. I know you probably didn't know the science behind it at that point, but
No.
you basically tapped into the science of whatever, the science of learning systems, by just having that passion to sort of change your narrative, like change your personal narrative, because you found those things you were told were true. And
Right.
so, the power was there for you to change your story, not just accept it to say, oh, I tried to figure out whether it's true or not. It's true, I'm dead. So
I was
I think,
dead set on proving it wrong. There was nothing going to stop me. There was no GPA, no LSAT score, no final exam
yeah,
score that was going to stop me from proving that I was capable of teaching myself how to
capable.
thrive. And really,
Yeah,
what it boiled down to was, what is a system? How do I systematize? What is the formula to success? And truly, the formula to success in law school is very similar to how I attack each of my cases in each of the stages of litigation. So learning that skill, like what is the
yeah,
process, in law school, has really served me well.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean it's all these qualities that I encourage in those that I mentor, and even my audience and LinkedIn in general, and just wherever I come into contact with. Is challenging their non-critical thinking in terms of following the crowd, and of course believing what people say about you, what your background might inform you, or your family's always been this way, and you're a first gen lawyer, which is a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
um
Thank you so much.
so it's challenging on so many levels, and it's saying, okay, I'm gonna make those things, some of them are true, but I'm gonna make this work. And
Absolutely.
this is how I'm going to go about it. And of course, you have to wrangle, the assistance of the people that are around you that have been doing it longer than you have, and I think I'm also passionate about helping in that sense, where someone says, hey, tell me what to do. I've tried the traditional route. I've studied in the way I know best to study. I'm just burning out, or it's not working for me. I need pictures. Law school doesn't provide pictures for my studying purposes, and tell me what to do. And I think when you meet a student like that, and I'm sure if you were a professor and you met yourself, if you had yourself coming to yourself, if I can
Yes.
put it like that, and saying, please give me the tools, or show me what you expect of me. God, I'm prepared to put in the effort, because I need to change this whole story and prove everything wrong on every level that I possibly can. I think that's something that professors and tutors and lecturers and teachers would welcome. And I think that's a very sort of a mature thing to do as a student, which I dare say that's a very rare breed these days. But
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 we
we
can teach
continue.
it. The
Yeah, we
beauty of
can.
this is that we can teach it. And so for students that are listening that want to know, well, how did you decide to change your narrative, as you eloquently said? I
Yeah.
decided by doing a couple of things. Really, number one, how did I learn new information? There's a boatload of online free tests you can take to figure out what your learning preference is. You can be an auditory, a read, write, kinesthetic. You can be an oral or a visual or a multimodal, some combination, and then studying in a way that appeals to those preferences so you're not frustrating yourself. Two, you
Mm,
can take online tests to understand what type of thinker you are. There are 12 here in the States, 12, sometimes 13, 14 different types of thought process thinkers that exist. And knowing which one or two or three you are will also help you decide how to appeal to your own preferences so that you're not fighting and doing something that somebody else says you should be doing. And then the biggest way, the third way, is to engage in metacognitive thinking. Look up the
mm,
term metacognition, look up its definition. Essentially, it means at every step when you're learning a new topic, students, at every single step, how do you engage with the material? It's thinking about how you learn. So, for example, if you are just reading a case and you're saying, "Oh, here's the issue, here's the rule, here's the court's reasoning, and here's the outcome," you are engaging in cognitive thinking. You are looking at the black and white letters on the page, and you are just pulling out specific information, not engaging. On the other side, if you start by asking yourself questions, what topic am I learning? How does this topic, this case that I'm reading, highlight that topic? And what is the relationship of this case that I'm reading currently between the slew of other cases I just read? Do I know anything about this topic that might bias me while I'm reading this? Is there any other case that I can read, like a short snippet of the case, that would help me digest this before I dive into the edited version in my textbook, right?
mm,
Can I put the rule in my own words? If I had to
mm,
paraphrase it without changing it, what would that look like? Then checking yourself like as you go and continuing. Those are metacognitive type questions for you to assess yourself. And that's what I specialize in doing, Lise. Like I literally, for every study skill, for every step you do in the process of the system, I have metacognitive question lists for you to ignite that passion to learn and to be in charge of your own learning and take the bull by the horns and master that topic by asking yourself questions about your learning. So those are
mm.
three ways your students, your listeners, our shared great beautiful students can start taking those steps for themselves to change their own narrative. If they're feeling like an imposter, they don't believe in themselves, there are things they can do to take that power back, like you and I were just talking about.
Yes, yes. And of course, I mean, you said that whatever you learned in that investigation and setting up those systems for yourself, it's carried over into practice.
Yep.
So, I mean, what a rich, what a wealth of, or what a toolkit, a wealthy toolkit. It's
Right.
not like it's not like it served you only at college and at law school. It's carried over into how you practice law, which I think a lot of us leave that experience at college, at law school. We leave it there. We get
Right.
our grades and we leave. And a lot of us do not learn for retention. We learn for regurgitation.
Right.
So so the fact that you were able to carry over that system into your future career, I mean, I guess I suppose it's testament to the validity of that system. And I think
It's
that's something
it's
that law students, graduates, those that are in law school, if you can get into this, do this exercise, and so use the tools that Lisa mentioned. you will probably be investing in your future career, in your professional development, because even though you might have to tweak some of the systems for the practice context, but you're basically going to be using the same thing, because we're all still learning in practice, right? It's still every day. We don't just get up and we have all the answers for clients. Sometimes we got to pull out a book, we got to read some cases, and we're always essentially still learning. So I love the fact that it carried over into the
In the most
professionals.
Absolutely. The most basic way that I can put it is this. When someone says law school's terrible, it doesn't teach you anything for the practice. I
Mm,
kind of cringe a little bit. And the reason I cringe is this. If we only consider what other people are teaching us, that might be true. But what we
yeah.
have the ability to teach ourselves proves that statement wrong every single time. So, what I learned in law school is that I am capable of hard things and that everything is possible. So, when I get into the practice and I'm dropped into court, I was licensed in the morning, and then that afternoon, the law firm I was working for had me make my first court appearance, Lise. And you know what? I didn't know how to do that, but I knew that in law school, I didn't know how to do law school and that I was
Yeah.
capable of figuring it out so that I had that base knowledge that I can figure this out. That is the skill that I taught myself, that I learned about
Mm,
myself. And that's how you take what you learn in law school and make it relevant to the practice. What I did in law school carries over into the practice so that anybody that says law school sucks, I have a completely different take on it. You learn so much about yourself, and
yeah.
that's where beauty is. And that's what we need in lawyers today. We need lawyers that believe in themselves, that um that don't feel that that when they come up against a tiny or a mountain of a problem, or someone
Mm,
treats them poorly, or like their boss or opposing counsel, that they don't just internalize that thinking that they're a bad human,
yes.
that they instead say, okay, there is an outside reason this person is acting this way that 99% of the time has zero to do with me. What can I do to continue being exposing my greatness in this beautiful
Yeah.
profession that we share? And that is the mindset that we need.
Yeah. Wow. In the questionnaire that I gave you to prepare for this interview, I asked you how did you overcome personal challenges? I think it's a nice segue into carrying on what you just said. And your answer was you overcame it by loving yourself and trusting that preparation and giving your best would be enough. And I think that is something that I have to remind my students, my followers, my audience constantly, is that because somebody else doesn't believe that you've done your best is not an indication that you haven't done your best. And you must refuse the gaslighting. Like, you know what you put in, you know how you figured it out, you know what system you use, and you've put it all in, whether it's to prepare for a case or whether it's to study for exams. You
Yep.
know what you've done, right? Accept yourself, accept the fact that you put in that effort, and your best is your best. And I always tell them this one thing as well: you only know what you know when you know it.
Yep.
And so no one is allowed to gaslight you in terms of, oh, you ought to have known this or you ought to have known that. No, actually in the exam, especially when you're recalling, you recall what you recall when you recall it. You might not recall everything, but in
Yep.
that moment you did your best, and you have to accept that. And I
You have to
think I
accept
think
that. And a part of it is accepting that your best might also equate to failure, and that
yeah,
that's okay, because sometimes
yeah,
our best still isn't good enough. And that is not a reflection of us being stupid. It's not a
yeah,
reflection of you being bad. It's a reflection of you not knowing in that situation of giving your best exactly what to do. And that is how we learn. And so, what I would love for the legal profession to do is to flip on its head the scenario that when we fail, that it's indicative of us being bad. When we
yeah.
fail, it's indicative of you being on the precipice of expanding and growing, which is what life is all about.
Yes, yeah. I find myself always banging that drum, like, guys, make room for failure. Okay, it's you have this. I think it's a toxic mentality that failure is not an option. And I add on to that, I put a semicolon and I say failure is not an option, it's an objective reality. Right? You
It
either, when it
is.
comes to exams at any level,
That's
even
so
even even in a practice situation, in a case, you're either going to win, you're going to lose, you're going to pass, you're going to fail, right?
right.
So if you deny it, it's not a case of, oh, I'm going to jinx it if I think about failure. You have to make room for it. You have to make room for it. And I did a post last week about, or a week and a half ago, about firms tend to value PR exercises over intellectual honesty. So we present the cases that we've won,
Yeah.
and that's just not the reality.
Not.
So we have this perception, like you said, the profession worldwide has to normalize losing and
Yes.
failing, because losing or failing is, again, it's not indicative of that you're a bad lawyer, you're incompetent, which is what the profession will label you as, not the world. The
Right.
profession will label you or will categorize you according to the cases you've won or the number of big clients, so-called big clients that you have. And
Right.
that for me is like professional,
It's
I don't know,
dangerous.
gaslighting, or it's just intellectual dishonesty. And so I
100.
think, yeah, we got, my passion, and I'm sure as is yours, is to start from college, start from law school, to say, guys, fail. It's okay. Sometimes aiming for 50% in a paper is okay. Like, do what you have to do your best. If that's 50%, it's okay. And so when
Right.
you come into a practice setup, you know that you're not giving necessarily, subpar performance, but you're only capable of so much. And if you put in your best and you still are not successful, that does not reflect on your professional competency, because you could still be giving it your heart and soul.
Right.
And so we ought not to gaslight ourselves or let our colleagues and the profession do the same to us. We have to be secure that we are professionals and we have acted in with integrity and we've done our research, our due diligence, and it is what it is. Failure is going to exist, and I think that's a drum that I'm going to keep on banging for some time to come.
Because the reality is, you can be 100% correct on all the facts and the law, and a jury could just not see it. They just don't see it, and you lose. And you lose for a client, and which is significant for their life or their liberty or their property or some, right? And so you can still lose, or a judge can just go against you, not go your way, right? And so, or a panel of judges, and so giving 100% is the only redemption, because there's nothing more you could have done. And then also, kind of like a corollary, is that some days we don't have 100% to give. We really only have 50% of ourselves to give. And so if we give 50%, that part we have to give, it's still the equivalent of giving 100%. That's what you have to give
100%.
that
Yeah.
day. Like, you still,
Yeah.
that's still your best. Now, you can't use that as like a crutch, you know and you still have
Yeah.
to figure out, for me, what it like, where is that baseline, like what is 100%, which is why I
Mm.
rely on systems, like, because I know if I check these boxes and I've done these things to master these
Yeah.
topics, then I know I've given 100%. I've touched
Mm.
every piece that I need to touch in law school to go to the exam and perform, so yeah, absolutely, at least
Yeah.
not
And
surprising, we agree.
I mean, you also mentioned that, you did have, you had your own kind of squad, at college or at law school. And I think as you progress, even in your career, the stages of your career, it's so important to have a squad. Whoever that cheerleading squad or that support squad is comprised of.
Yep.
Now we have executive coaching and it's such an industry. But the value of even mentorship, and I think I had a discussion with about having a professor that believes in you, um, and that sort of carries you through your law school or your college experience. Like, when I asked you for, who were your mentors during your journey, and you mentioned some people. But maybe you could just touch on that, like from the time you're a student to the time obviously your needs change and evolve, but just touch on the importance of having mentors, even when you are sort of established in practice, and what the value, how you see the value of having those kinds of people around.
So that was a really good question. So I think that um, mentors kind of takes on, in my experience in law school to now, has taken on a really different meaning, that definition of that term. So a mentor to me in law school would have been someone who really understood how I operate,
Mm,
emotionally, mentally, and then a second category would be someone who understands how law school operates to get me through it, right? And then a fourth category would be someone who understands how what I'm doing in law school is applicable and teaches me the practical skill of lawyering. So like those are
mm,
three different categories in law school I would have looked for mentoring and for support. Um,
yeah,
and but what the most change that I've experienced, though, it's interesting, is reflecting, hindsight is 2020, but reflecting and saying, man, those lawyers that I learned from initially at that very first law firm, they
yeah,
are the most incredible lawyers I've ever seen. Now, practicing 20 years and seeing how lawyers operate,
yeah,
that I had the opportunity to learn from experts who were just incredible, um,
yeah,
really set me apart in my lawyering so that I was able to do things quicker, get better results because of the skill level that they were at. And at the
yeah,
time, I didn't know it until I really went to my second law firm and saw how other law firms were run and practices were run,
mm,
which ripened me to know exactly how our own law firm should be run, and make those decisions for our own clients. And so the biggest change, like I was saying though before, is that the best mentors aren't necessarily the ones that are related to the law. It's
mm,
people who believe in going back to the roots, girl. It's people that believe in mindset and how to channel all that beautiful energy that exists within you for free, how to
mm,
channel that into a very powerful, like, passion
yeah,
and way to make yourself unstoppable. I went to a Tony Robbins um, called Unleash the Power Within seminar with my husband,
mm,
and learned a lot about the stories we were told as children up to, adulthood, which ones are
mm,
true, which ones are false, and really examining when I'm triggered in the practice, how it's
yeah,
related to something that's not true. And so the
yeah,
mentors that have really helped me focus on my internal power, I guess we'll
yeah,
call it, those are the ones that I've thrived the most from in the practice,
mm,
who have gotten me to realize, like, hey, you're unstoppable, Lise. This place might
yeah,
not be for you. This place might, don't stop, continue going,
yeah,
move on. I don't know if
yeah,
that answered your question, kind of, but really it's always about how can you be a good human? How can you continue on? How can you love yourself? How can you surround yourself with like-minded people that will always support you, not judge you, and want the best for you and want you to
yeah,
achieve your goals? Like, what are your
yeah,
goals? Students, if you can find someone who says, what are your 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, 5 year goals in the law, and then they help you, give you tasks to help you, like, get there, that's
yeah,
your mentor. That's your mentor in the
yeah.
law. They care, you know?
Yeah, that's really it's really ear opening, not eye opening. um, I find myself doing the mentorship thing, and here is not a thing. So and I sort of tackle it from an all-round perspective. So it's holistic. So I tell them, you mentioned about being human, and I tell in my mentorship, I say, we are human first and then professionals. And so whatever we're going to talk about or tackle is firstly on that level, because that's ultimately going to feed into the kind of professional you're going to become. So you
Yep.
can't really split it up into, okay, this is what I do as my personal time, air quotes, and this is what I do as a professional. So I'm always looking, and I'm just one person. I mean, I think if I had the foresight or the luxury of having like what you had, I think I would have probably been a little bit wiser and maybe a little bit sharper. But I think in terms of what I offer out now is basically I'm being what I didn't have, in the sense that
I
I
love
do
it.
my best from a professional perspective to give them advice, from a personal perspective in terms of, hey, you got to change this, fine tune that, you know, don't let people gaslight you, and just sort of keep themselves aware of themselves. Because I think self awareness is also very much lacking in amongst students,
It
and it's
is, but you
hard
know
to
what, Lise?
mentality. So
Yeah,
when you tell them like you can do it, or your best is different to your friend's best, it's like, oh, it's extremely eye opening for them. And the reality is you don't have any special insights, but it's just the reality of being human is that we are all different.
and
So I
connecting
find
with them
myself
on
like,
that level and saying and stopping them in
yeah,
their tracks, saying, "Hey, you know that I believe in you and that I know you can do this. You know
yeah,
that you're worthy of your seat in law school. You know that you are incredible and that you possess this insatiable ability to impact our profession and make ripples in ways that have never been seen before. Like, do
yeah,
you know that about yourself? Like, just stopping them in their tracks and saying that the truth, is so beneficial to students, because a lot of what we do, yes, we are well educated in how to succeed in law school, but a lot of what we do, the component is human connection and human support, really,
yeah,
right, like
yeah,
uplifting them, reminding them like, you can do this, you can find something you love, or you have the power to decide to do something else outside of the law, and that's okay too.
yeah,
If it's too much for you, good, that's your body saying, let's please do something else,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
making that decision is 100% okay. Get
yeah,
out, you
yeah,
know
yeah. As I said when we chatted before we started recording, if any episode of this podcast series can give someone the final push to leave,
Mhm.
then I would have done a service to. I would have saved a person somewhere in the world.
You sure would
Because
have.
because sometimes even in mentorship, sometimes you gotta say, hey, I think you're reaching your limits. If this is happening, that's happening. Your body is giving you signs. You're going for therapy, and you still don't want to leave the toxic situation at work. Like, you have to leave. And I often tell people, like, they'll DM me on LinkedIn, and they'll give me a long story, and I'll say, you know what you have to do. And sometimes that's all it takes for them. And they'll say, OMG, Lisa, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have left. And all I did was confront them with
The
what they
reality.
already know, right? And I think
Hmm.
that's so important for me as a mentor, and it's obviously very rewarding when you are listened to, and of course when you can rescue people by just confronting them with sometimes their own limitations,
Yeah.
and also their superpowers. So you say,
I
okay,
love that. I love that.
yeah, so I think now is a nice time to talk about the lessons that you learned from mistakes. You said you asked me, there were more characters on the form for this one. Um, same here. I mean, and you said in a nutshell, you learned that mistakes are precursors to something great happening that you don't necessarily see at the moment. That but for the mistake you would not have learned, and that you do not need to shame yourself for being human. So I think maybe we are not given the space to make mistakes in the profession. I think part of it has to do with the whole thing about, you know, professional, not being accused of malpractice and things like that. So we put on like hyper mode, and we sort of tend to practice sometimes on tenterhooks because we don't want to be, sued for malpractice or whatever. But I think the space for mistakes is so important, and we have to start from the time we choose to enter this profession. Again, like I said, failure is an objective reality. And sometimes we can make costly mistakes. Maybe we didn't study enough as much as we ought to have done, or we left something to the last minute, and then we made a costly mistake, and we had to learn a very painful lesson. But I think the whole concept of making mistakes as a lawyer, and I consider law students to be lawyers already. I treat them as my colleagues, right? So
Yeah,
you
me
have
too.
to have this capacity to say, right, while I will not make mistakes on purpose, but when I do make the mistakes, obviously I have to own up to the consequences. And it's probably propelling me to something else. And maybe there's some kind of a redemption opportunity for me to learn something else. So maybe you can just touch on that. And of course, this whole thing about being a flawed human being,
Right,
that
right. Nobody's
you
perfect.
know,
Practice makes
yeah,
progress. Practice does not make perfection. You're not trying to be perfect. And if you are, that's a problem that you got to work on within yourself. But I think what you just said, Lise, is whenever you operate from a place of fear of making a mistake, fear of saying the
mm,
wrong, fear of stepping on someone else's toes, what you're really doing is you are squashing the person, the traits, the characteristics that make you you. So you
yeah,
always should operate with a from a place of competency. Like in this moment of time, I've done my best to be competent in what I'm doing. Competency, obviously, on the range, the more time you do something, the more competent you become. In the beginning, you can become
mm,
competent. There's things you can do, but if you're competent but also fearful, then you're not fully competent. You haven't done the work. You really haven't. The work is with yourself. Have I given 100% to doing
mm,
this new thing in the law? And if you can say that, you're competent and you're valuable at that point. Um, but if you're fearful and you want to, please people, or you want to do what everyone says you should be doing, or you're competing with others, or you're looking at others and you're thinking, I'll never get like them, or oh my gosh, or apologizing for saying something, or just operating from that place of just truly not loving yourself, then that's it. That's the problem. That's what you need to work on with yourself.
mm,
Competing and those things, because it's
mm.
100% chance. There is a 100% chance that you will fail at something. So just accept that and go from there.
Yeah.
You will fail. Everybody, you're going to fail. News press, you're going to fail. It's good. It's okay. It's okay. Welcome to life.
That's a difficult to swallow, but it's true. There's 100% chance of you failing,
Yep.
whether
So
along
welcome
your
to it.
academic journey or even in practice, you are going to fail at
Yep.
something. And I think there's like the saying that's going around that says you must do something, or what, be prepared to suck at something, or something like that. Kind
I
of like
love
a
it.
do it if kind of attitude. Like if you think you suck at it, do it anyway. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as we round up, um, I asked you if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring lawyers. What would it be? So I'm going to read it out, and then you can maybe add to it if you want to. So, your message is you are enough, you can do hard things, you are beautiful, and you deserve your seat at the table.
Yep. And on top of that, take each day one chunk at a time. Because if you're looking at, if you're sitting in law school and you're like, I need to pass that exam right now, or I need to pass that bar exam 3 or 4 months away, you're setting yourself up for unrealistic feelings. You are not in
Mm,
control of that passage 3 months, 4 months, 14 weeks away from you. So when you
mm,
think, what can I do today that that will get me closer towards my goals that I've defined for
yeah.
myself? You set yourself up to succeed because as you cross them off, you feel that confidence and you know
Mm,
that there's a bigger picture and that you're making your way to attain those goals with each of those small steps. So chop only the wood in front of you, my friends.
mm, mm. Very good point to end off on. So, everyone, I hope that was of value to you. I tried to cram in a lot. And I think there will have to be a part two and a part three because Lisa is just, she's just a wealth and a complex of value. So, we haven't even talked about the tools and the resources that she's developed and continues to develop. Um, so, I mean, at the end of this episode, I'll just direct you to her swanky new website, which I was kind of drooling over. It's lisablasser.com. Um, where you'll see all her offerings on display, and you can sign up and get in touch. And then there's her LinkedIn profile, which has way more followers than I have for a good reason. And there's a lot of value, a lot of takeaway. It's not just content for the sake of it. So please follow her on LinkedIn. If you made them a tragic oversight of not noticing already, so follow. And of course, check out the Law School operating system, which is um, again helping you to adapt the information that she gives and finding your unique learning system and style and all the brain science that goes behind it in a very very doable format, and of course in Lisa's very calming and accommodating voice. So if you take advantage of that, I'm sure it can be adapted to any content, any country, I think. Because for me personally, a law student is a law student anywhere in the world. So please check Lisa out, follow her, check the website out. There's a ton of resources for you to take advantage of and just make your law school journey and even following up into practice, make that qualitative. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on and sharing with my listeners, and I don't think it'll be the last time. Um, I
Thank
do
you so
appreciate
much,
you a
Lisa.
lot,
Aw.
and I'm sure our listeners will get a better appreciation of all of the backstory and just a little bit about who you are. I think that breaks a lot of assumptions about the profession, right? And it's good to see that someone that didn't start off very well succeeding and then some, so you're quite a rare role model for students and for even people like me. So thank you so
Oh,
much for coming on.
you're so sweet. Thank you so much for all of those super kind words. I get the exact same resource and friendship and support from you and all of your fabulous content. I thank you for endorsing my product and my services to the law students, and I honestly look forward to meeting every one of your listeners and continuing the support together. Thanks, Lise.
Cool. Thanks, Lisa, and thank you guys for listening. And please feel free to listen as often as you want to, because I'm sure you'll find something new and a nugget to take away each time. So thank you guys, and enjoy the episode.